Ecash was founded by a group of Bitcoin developers who founded Bitcoin Cash, and it seems to be a very promising project. Today we'll look at it from a technical point of view and see how the chart is looking. So stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is King, your host, and today's video is for pure educational purposes, and it's not meant to be a financial advice because this is simply my own opinion. If it's your first time in the channel and you happen to like my content, please consider subscribing and smashing the like button. Also share it if you think it's worth sharing. Now let's go and look at the chart. This is the daily chart of Ecash, and as you can see over here, we don't have much data and much history to build on because this coin is technically a new coin. It's barely 3 months old. But we'll try to get as much insights from this chart as possible. Let's start with the things that we already know based on this chart that we have over here. The first piece of info is that the initial run of Ecash from the moment of its launch until the peak that it did back in September, it was very impressive. It did about 1,900 growth in price. And this information is very important. Keep this number in mind for later on because we will use it once we try to forecast the next move for Ecash. The second thing that we know already for sure is that the price is going to go from some point over here and break the previous top that it formed back in September. Because what we have right now is just an initial impulse and a corrective pattern over here. So in order to complete one of the two structures, or at least the most basic structure that we have in the market, which is a three-wave structure, we'll have to go all the way and break this top over here. So the upcoming movement for Ecash is going to be bullish, and we should expect to break out this level, which was around $0.00038. Now if we move to the corrective pattern that we currently have in Ecash that started at this point over here. So after reaching the top, we started a corrective movement towards the downside. What I can say here is that we are in front of one of two scenarios. The first scenario suggests that this corrective structure over here is a complicated correction that's not yet complete, where this was its initial corrective wave down, and now we're in the second wave of this correction, which seems to be forming a running flat pattern that has 1 and 2 and 3 waves. So this scenario suggests as soon as this wave is complete, we should have one more movement down where we break this bottom over here, and then at that point we should continue trending up. Now if this is the current pattern that we have, this would make it a 5-wave complicated structure where we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now if we were in any other market, I would tell you that this scenario makes a lot of sense, and I would not be looking at any entry in this pair unless we break down this top over here. But because we're in the crypto market, and because I believe that the cycle is nearing its end, so I think there is another scenario that might have a better chance of happening. This scenario suggests that the correction was completed here, right at this candle, where we had an initial impulse down, and then a single pullback, and then another impulse down as well. So this was the 1, 2, 3 corrective pattern that we had in this whole correction, and this movement from this point onwards is the beginning of a new uptrend. Now what will confirm which scenario is going to happen is going to be a two key support and resistance areas. If the first scenario of the complicated correction is going to happen, then the price has to go down and break this last low that it has formed over here. However, if we're going with the second scenario, then we need to wait till the price crosses above this level over here. And why is this important? Because if the price goes down for the first scenario, we would be forming a new lower low, which means we'll be in a trend continuation towards the downside. However, if the price continues going up from here and closes above this top, because this was the last high we have formed, so we will consider it as a new trend because we already have formed a higher high, and then we'll start a series of higher highs and higher lows, then be on our way towards breaking the previous top that we had. So if any of you guys are looking at this specific pair, these are the two important areas that you should be looking at in order to confirm either a downtrend or an uptrend from here. Now, I personally tend to lean towards the second scenario more for two reasons. The first one I already told you about, because I believe that the cycle is nearing its end. But the second reason is the Fibonacci retracement level that we have in this structure, where the price has retraced from the 0.618 retracement level. And that's the most key support level that we have in the Fibonacci retracement, which would likely confirm that the price is going to continue its uptrend from this point onwards. But again, this is not confirmed, and the first scenario could still play out over here. In either one of these scenarios, we are eventually going to have a last impulse that will break this top, whether this is the initial uptrend, or if we had more downtrend and the price went down to break this level and then continued up from here. So in both cases, we should be heading at some point to break this top over here and complete the three-way structure that we should have. Now let's zoom out a little bit and move into a logarithmic chart instead of a regular chart to try to forecast how far could we be going from this point onwards once we have our last impulse in this structure. Now if we copy the historic movement of Ecash and plot it in the current structure, because I see a lot of similarities between the current bullish engulfing candles and these small doji candles and what we had at this point over here. So if we copy this pattern from this point onwards and plot it over here, we will see that if history tends to repeat itself similar to what we had in the initial impulse, the price is going to hit somewhere around $0.0022, and that's about 2/10 of a cent. Now if you remember at the beginning of the video, I told you, remember the growth percentage that we had over here, which was 1900%. Now why is that important? Because usually in structures like this, the third wave of a structure tends to be the biggest impulse out of them. So this is usually the initial impulse, then we get a correction, and then we get a second impulse, which by itself is the third wave of the structure. So usually this wave over here is the longest in the structure. So if the same is going to happen over here, and because we had 1900% growth in the initial impulse, so we might be looking at a way higher growth than the 1900% that we had in the initial impulse. So that's one possibility to keep in mind. However, this is not necessarily to happen in every single case, and we may just get as much growth as we had in the initial impulse. One thing to keep in mind also is that Ecash is a big cap coin. So in order for it to multiply 20 times in price, the whole market has to be moving in a parabolic movement, and everything else needs to be growing in price as well. So let me hear your thoughts and tell me in the comments below, what do you think? Do you think that this coin has a big potential on the long run, or do you believe that it has no chance of reaching these price levels? And if you're still not subscribed, please make sure to subscribe and smash the like button, because it's really helping the channel. This was it for today, guys, and until next video, stay safe and see you later.